There we are. President Trump said that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. Well, let's discuss all of that now with Tom Plant, who's Director of Proliferation and Nuclear Policy at the Defence and Security-focused think tank, the Royal United Services Institute. Thank you very much for being with us. So there we are. We said it's a bit more Twitter diplomacy from President Trump.
Yeah. I suppose diplomacy is one thing that you might call it. I suppose it's slightly unfortunate that we've become increasingly used to trying to decipher US policy through the medium of interpreting President Trump's tweets. I suppose the first thing to say here is, of course, he's totally correct that his nuclear deterrent is infinitely more powerful and presumably more reliable than North Korea's. But the question is, why does he feel the need to highlight this now, especially after a New Year's statement from Kim Jong-un that seemed to highlight that his nuclear deterrent, as far as he was concerned, had been, quotes, tested to the full? What this tweet seems to do to me is maybe provoke the North Korean regime into changing that policy.
It also comes at a time when we're seeing a little, well, maybe a glimmer of hope of some détente between North and South Korea, with the re-establishment of this hotline and so on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not sure that this tweet will affect that per se, but it does sort of play into this wider risk, if you like, from the US and South Korean end, that their alliance might be put under strain by sort of differing approaches, differing policy approaches, and certainly different messages. And then from the other side, the risk that the North Koreans might try and exploit that in some way to sort of leverage, as they have in the past, any difference between the two, and with Japan for that matter, to secure concessions in some kind of larger game, if you like, that might lead up to any kind of negotiation.
I mean, it does all sound a bit like the playground, doesn't it? My nuclear button's bigger than yours. But in a sense, isn't that really what the theory of nuclear deterrence is, saying that my nuclear stockpile is more powerful than yours, and therefore you cannot countenance attacking me?
In a way, yes. I think in this case, actually, it's not a great example of where the US nuclear deterrent is relevant. I mean, this is the point. The North Korean nuclear deterrent to the US isn't predicated on their ability to totally destroy the US. It's predicated, presumably, if it works at all, in its ability to impose a risk of unacceptable damage, which may, in the US case, clearly not be total destruction. It may also incorporate sort of conventional attacks on the South. That would also be unacceptable. And on the other side of the equation, the US ability to threaten North Korea with destruction is again not predicated on its nuclear weapons. It's based on its overwhelming conventional military advantage. So in this case, you know, the whole issue of nuclear deterrence is kind of far more complicated than that. And again, you know, this is another thing that's sort of wrong, I guess, with this tweet. And we're kind of running out of ways to describe Donald Trump's tweeting about nuclear weapons as wrong. But here's another one, is that it's actually irrelevant in this context. You know, it's the conventional military support to South Korea, the US presence on the peninsula that provides a deterrent against any North Korean military adventurism.
Good to talk to you. Thank you for your analysis. That's Tom Plant there from the Royal United Services